All right, welcome to the October 17th, 2018 meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission. Please rise and follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Marcelino, please call the roll.
Commissioner Engler,
Here.
Commissioner Lemo,
Here.
Commissioner Reeder,
Present.
Vice Chair Gregory,
Here.
Chair Simpson.
Here.
Thank you.
At this time, our recording secretary, Ms. Marcelino, will also read the public comments overview.
This is the time and place for public comments. A speaker card is available for those wishing to address the Traffic Commission regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. Speakers per specific agenda item shall be called and heard during that specific item. All remarks should be addressed to the Traffic Commission as a whole, and all documents for the Commission and the official record should be presented to the recording secretary prior to speaking. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. Under state law, public comment matters may not be considered by the Traffic Commission unless listed on the agenda but may be referred to the city engineer for administrative follow-up. As comments can only be recorded while speaking into the microphone, please refrain from addressing the commissioners unless you are at the podium.
At this time, are there any public comments?
Okay, as of this time, we have one who's speaking under public comments. And pursuant to Traffic Commission standards, public comment, speakers are allowed 3 minutes. Also, please silence all cell phones during the meeting. Thank you.
Hang on just a second. So please go to the microphone and then state your name and city of residence.
Wow, this
It's
is
very
formal.
official.
Yeah, okay, thank you guys. Is it here? Okay. My name is G. Johnson. We live in the Westlake Village, Linden Grove Street. And we just got letter from the city. They're proposing the stop sign on Linden Grove Street at Harkland. So basically our street is a cul-de-sac both ways. And I don't really understand why they need a stop sign. Anyway, we stop and make a turn. And then at Harkland, it's very, what is it, dead-end street, right? It's like not a main street or anything. It's like a gated the community very end, and those people are driving like at least 40 miles per hour. Straight down. So it's supposed to be 25 miles per hour. I think that's the city law, right? Because it's a residential area. So many times we're walking our dogs and have to stop in the middle of the street because they're coming down way too fast. And then if they put the stop sign our very end of the like cul-de-sac street, we have like maybe 10 houses each street. What's the point of it? We come out maybe once every 1 hour, cars coming, but they coming straight down of like 40 miles an hour. And then it's a safety hazard. And then if they put in the stop sign on both ways, and then they're gonna be even worse because now they think, oh, they have stop sign, we can go even faster. So I don't really understand who suggests this stop sign, or why suddenly come out to our street, not any other streets. That's my concern. Or I don't know, like, I never done this one before, so it's so hard.
Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you. Are there any responses from the staff to the public speaker?
Chair Simpson, this item is actually the first item in the engineering report tonight. We'd like to go ahead and give our presentation, and at that point in time, we can respond to public comments and any questions or comments that the commissioners have. Thank you.
Sounds good. I support that. Alrighty. So looking ahead to agenda item number 6, we will get back to the public comment in regards to the stop sign installation. But right now we're moving on to engineers' reports. So go on ahead and take it away. Yes.
We,
Sorry.
we
First of
skipped
all,
5.
number 5. So summary notes. Are there any questions regarding the summary notes for agenda item 5? Okay, we'll just move on now to number 6, engineers' reports.
Okay, thank you, Chair Simpson. This is item before you is to consider adding stop sign control to 4 intersections located within residential areas. Received a number of public concerns regarding right-of-way control at 4 intersections listed here on this little slide exhibit on the TV monitor on the side. At each of the 4 intersections, there are no signs present to regulate vehicular right-of-way. Hopefully the traffic commissioners were able to drive out to each of the locations and observe the field conditions. We conducted our own field investigation and identified that at each of the locations there's issues related to impaired visibility related to either corner landscaping, parked cars, or road curvature. The introduction of stop signs at some of the legs of the intersections would better define and regulate right-of-way control and mitigate the impaired sight distance. In general, at 4-legged intersections, we do prefer to have stop signs at the designated minor street approaches, and for T intersections, to have stop sign control at the terminating leg. Stop signs are tools to regulate right-of-way, to make it clear to drivers the rules of the road to avoid traffic collisions. In the past, we've had people ask, can we have stop signs to control speeders? That's not their purpose. We have other tools to control speeding. In some neighborhoods within the city, you'll probably encounter some of these uncontrolled intersections, much like the 4 intersections you're considering tonight. Our practice is to upgrade the intersections to stop sign control when they're brought to our attention by residents, just like these 4 intersections that you're considering this evening. So I'll start with location maps of the 4 intersections we're looking at. This first map shows the intersection of Calle Violeta and Calle Glacina. We're proposing east-west stop sign control on Calle Violeta. And on the lower portion of the same exhibit, we have stop sign control facing southbound Calle Glacina at Calle Durazno. This next location shows the location of Linden Grove Street at Hart Glen Avenue. It's a 4-legged intersection. We're proposing 2-way stop control here at this intersection with stops on the Linden Grove legs of the intersection. And this last location is at the intersection, it's a T intersection of Lamont Avenue at Sapra Street with a stop sign proposed for the southbound Lamont at Sapra. I do want to point out that we are not proposing all-way traffic or all-way stop sign control at any of these intersections. All-way traffic control is generally designed for high-volume traffic intersections, which is not what we have here. The standard for that is to have 500 vehicles per hour during 8 hours of the day, and that's far from what we have at these intersections. Prior to tonight's meeting, we did notify the residents that are within a 500-foot radius of each of these intersections. It came out to about 260 meeting notices that were mailed out. We did give you a copy of 5 emails that we received prior to the meeting, so you can go ahead and read what the comments were from those residents. These next few slides will show examples of some of the impaired sight visibility conditions that we encountered. This is an example at eastbound Calle Violeta at Calle Glacina, heavy vegetation at the southwest corner. Here's the same intersection, vegetation over at the opposite side at the northwest corner. This is an example of a parked vehicle that's located at the intersection of Violeta at Glacina in the westbound direction. And in addition, there's this brick planter for a tree that also causes impaired visibility. This last example of it shows you road curvature. So if you're coming up to southbound Lamont, you can only see a limited amount of uphill traffic, and also there's a hedge there up on the corner that impairs your visibility. So in summary, our goal here is to bring 4 intersections that are subject to public concerns related to right-of-way control into compliance with our current standards and practices for stop sign control at residential intersections. I want to clarify who has the right-of-way and to mitigate impaired sight distance conditions. The proposed stop signs are not designed to alleviate traffic volume issues, speeding, or poor driver behavior. So with that, the staff recommendation is in the staff report. The recommendation developed by the Traffic Commission this evening will be forwarded to City Council for future consideration. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Gregory?
So basically, these are areas that have been identified that we're trying to make safer due to line of sight issues and just people possibly ignoring, right away situations where there could be road conflicts, especially again when you can't see a vehicle come. You might already be out there and it might be too late. So it's not designed to slow cars down, but make possibly people entering from side streets a little more cautious, that they know they need to stop and proceed carefully rather than do a kind of a rolling, merge onto the other lane. Am I correct in that?
Yes, that's correct. Especially for the 4-legged intersections, as you approach from either of the 2 streets, as you approach the intersection, the vehicle that would be coming from the cross street, they don't have stop signs, and maybe they assume the other direction does. And so what we're trying to do is make it very clear one of the legs has stop control, so that way we're trying to reduce or avoid any collisions. So far, we took a look at the collision history at these locations. There weren't any collisions that were that came up in our review. And hopefully with this we can avoid those drivers that roll into the intersection as there's a vehicle that's coming down. Especially the example would be at Sapra at Lamont. That was the location where we had concerns with high speeds on Sapra coming
Right.
downhill. And the last thing you probably want is someone rolling down Lamont, darting into the intersection as there's a southbound vehicle coming down the hill. So the stop sign hopefully would help mitigate that situation.
Does the danger increase or decrease at nighttime? Because I know a vehicle does have its lights on, but it's much easier when you're the one that has to stop and wait for the approaching car rather than pull out, think you have time to make a turn before they get there. In your opinion, which is more hazardous?
I guess that's hard to answer because it depends on what what the driver is doing. Are they paying attention to the cross street that's coming up? Even though there's headlights, are they paying attention to the fact that there's headlights coming out of the cross street? So that's difficult to tell. I think it's based on the driver behavior that approaching the intersection.
So we're trying to make drivers in a certain direction know they need to stop and move more cautiously than just assume no one's coming and there could be a safety issue.
Yeah, that's correct. Especially like the T intersections and at the 4-legged, if we do put in stop sign control, at some of those locations, as those photographs showed, there's corner landscaping. So that fact alone might block your view of the traffic that's coming towards the intersection, and you may not be able to see that there's a headlight coming in your direction. So with the stop sign, that would make it clear to the driver that's at the intersection, they do need to stop and yield the right of way to any traffic entering the intersection.
So let me get this also correct. So in a way, since we cannot by law use stop signs to mitigate speed, and these potentially people are traveling faster down some of these streets, We're just adding some precaution on the people from the side streets to merge onto them and look for speeding cars. Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
Commissioner Lamel?
Thank you. I guess that's sort of what I wanted to confirm. I really did not pay attention to any of the speed discussion at all, based upon the symposium that we attended probably 10 years ago. The state's made it very clear, and I agree with the staff's recommendation when it comes to first and foremost a right-of-way issue, and in this case, a line-of-sight issue as well. So I appreciate staff's report, and I'm going to support the recommendation.
Commissioner Engler?
Thank you. So, in reviewing the letters that have been written to us regarding this issue and listening to our audience so far, I'm wondering if there are other issues at Hart Glen that need to be considered before we can go forward with a decision that impacts the intersection where you would like to put controls. And so I'm expressing that, but because I need to know if there's more comments to be made. And
Commissioner Reeder?
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Commissioner Engler. Thank you for bringing that up, because I think it's important. Here tonight, we're finding we have 4 citizens that live in that area that do not want these stop signs, plus a lovely speaker here that also voiced her opinion. So I think this requires a little more attention. Mr. Machiko, you state that you received citizen requests for this stop sign on Linden Grove and Hart Glen. What was the nature of that request?
The issue there was when there's parked vehicles at the intersection, that there's a line of sight issue at the intersection. So we went and looked at it, and we noticed, yes, there is, when the parked vehicles were there, sometimes not. But at the same time, we did notice the issue with the lack of traffic control at the intersection. The citizen was under the impression that stop signs were already present, and I had to point out the fact that they were not present.
So this citizen was not, whose home was not on Linden Grove.
I believe the address was on Linden Grove. They're a
What?
resident within that street.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up. One letter that we got, I especially took notice of. If the commission will indulge me, I'd like to read a little part of it. Would it be all right? It starts out with, I would like to think drivers on Hart Glen currently approach the intersection with some level of caution. If you install stop signs only for drivers on Linden Grove, that reason for caution is removed for drivers on Hart Glen, and speeds will likely increase, making the visibility issue even more dangerous. So perhaps the visibility issue isn't going to go away, but if the speeds do increase, because now the people coming down Hart Glen know that traffic has to stop, so they don't have to really pay attention for vehicles approaching that intersection, because now they have been given the right-of-way rather than a shared right-of-way. That line-of-sight distance might become more important for us because of the line-of-sight issue, because the vehicles might proceed at a faster rate. Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, this intersection is very close to the intersection of Triumphal Canyon Road, which terminates there. So if you're coming downhill, I think you're probably within 150 feet of the intersection. So the downhill traffic that's approaching Triumphal, it'd be doubtful that they're traveling at a high rate of speed, knowing that they have to come to a stop about 150 feet away. And then people entering from Triumphal, well, this intersection here is only about 150 feet from the intersection. Maybe a high-performance vehicle can get a very high rate of speed through this intersection of Linden Grove, but I would imagine the speeds, really aren't that high at this point. Further up the street, I can see that speeds would be higher, but at this location, it's so close to a stop control intersection, I can't see it being, significantly high.
Okay, so the opinion that was put forth in this letter, you don't agree with.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Limo?
Yes, I would, with all due respect, I think that the commission needs to take into account some key points. What I'm most concerned about was when I read the letters. Now, keeping in mind there were 260 letters sent out. I've counted 6 comments back, net. 2 from the same household. Or possibly 4 from the same household. 2 from 2 different households. So 4 of them represent 2 people, 2 homeowners. What concerns me the most in every one of them is convenience should never be a consideration. And the reason why why convenience should never be a consideration is we have to deal with safety and liability. I can tell you that even just driving here today, the 65 mile an hour speed limit was grossly inconvenient for me to make it here on time. I tend to think that a state trooper would not necessarily pay attention to my argument. He really doesn't care about my convenience. And by the way, if my wife's watching, I did not get a speeding ticket today. That being said, I think that there are 2 issues that staff brought forth that really need to be considered seriously. Line of sight, which is a safety issue, and it really doesn't matter to me what the speed is of the person that doesn't have the stop sign. And the reason why I say that is I've established with the stop sign what the right-of-way is. So it's incumbent upon that driver to see the safety of their entering the intersection regardless of the speed of someone else. And so I think that's very important. Hoping that people will drive slower because there's not a stop sign, to me, is just not a good strategy, and I don't believe it would protect the city from any levels of liability. And so for that reason, I'd like us to certainly consider the correspondence we've received, but consider it in context versus there's many times when I have an opinion that don't necessarily meet the facts of what the city staff's experience is. And so for that reason, I think we have to look at this picture more holistically as opposed to only 6 comments out of 260 people approached.
Any other comments? Commissioner?
Yeah, so I'm trying to ascertain what the real issues are on some of these people. And the thing that I see is, for example, they're saying the stop sign won't create a safer pedestrian crossing or anything. Well, I don't think that's what we're trying to do. That's just like when we put a crosswalk in, that creates a false sense of security that people think they're somehow protected from being run over and don't need to look both ways, which is certainly a situation where we don't want to create it. We need people to look both ways and cross safely. The other thing was that they're talking about, well, people should drive 25 miles an hour. Well, that's the de facto speed in a neighborhood. But, I think most of us, know that the average residential speed is, 34 miles an hour unless it's changed. And they're calling 35 miles an hour excessive, which is 1 mile an hour different from the average, residential speed. But if you can update me if that has changed, I don't see where the danger is. I don't think 35 miles an hour, especially if a road has a hill. I mean, people are probably riding their brake just to keep it at 35 miles an hour. But can you share what's a safe speed on a residential, or is there some other factor on that street that may be causing them to? I mean, nobody said anybody was going over that.
Okay, well, I'm just to go back to speeds on a residential street. When we get for example, the speed hump requests for slowing traffic. When we do our studies, on average, most of those streets that we've studied and reviewed with Traffic Commission here, the 85th percentile speed is about anywhere from 33, 34, 35 miles an hour. And, not necessarily that's the safe speed given the road conditions. Obviously, the speed is going to be dictated by if there's a grade. For example, on Sapper Street, there's a fairly steep grade there. So I imagine the drivers going downhill are probably not driving 25 miles an hour, but uphill, maybe they are because it's, they're driving up a grade, so they're going to have to travel slower. Here at Hart Glen, at Linden Grove, as you travel further away from Triumphal, as you travel north, there is a slight grade. It's not as steep as Sapra, but I would imagine further up the hill, there's probably some issue with speed, but that is a rather short street. So it's questionable. I mean, we'd have to do a speed study to determine, what exactly those speeds are. But the issue is at Linden Grove. That's only about 150 feet away from Triumphal Canyon Road. So that at that location, it's just hard to imagine that there's high speeds above 35.
People are speeding up
that
just to
point.
slam on their brakes because they have to stop.
Yeah.
So basically, their speed is what gravity is, carrying them down the street. Because a car. I live in a neighborhood that has a hill, and before you know it, I'm going that 34, 35 miles an hour, riding the brake, right? And people normally just try to keep it there, unless they see someone else they need to react to and slow down some. So that's not a unusual situation where you're not going to try to slow down to 25 miles an hour if it doesn't impact anybody that you see. So I don't see what their objection is, to tell you the truth, other than we're just trying to keep them a little more safe by creating a situation where they know they need to stop and look both ways. It's the only safe way to enter onto that street. So we can't do anything to mitigate that traffic speed, correct? I mean, there's hardly any traffic at all on this street. Am I correct in that? I mean, there's no speed hump or anything we can put in.
Yeah, speed. If the issue to control speed, we have other ways. We have police enforcement. For this location at Hart Glen, I have relayed the concerns over speed, so I've requested the police department to go out and enforce the speed limit 25 miles an hour on Hart Glen Avenue. And then if residents want to pursue speed humps, that's another alternative where the residents can circulate a petition, and if the majority of the residents feel strongly about putting speed humps on their street, we can do a study and see whether or not the street meets the criteria to qualify for speed humps.
Is there any signage or whatever? I mean, I see we put a lot of signs up that says cross traffic ahead, slow, that somehow we put in, say, an extra speed limit sign to remind them that they should be traveling 25 miles an hour.
Well, we can double check. We do a field check at Hart Glen, actually all these streets, and double check to make sure the appropriate 25 mile per hour signs are posted at the correct locations. Example here at Hart Glen, as you come off Triumphal, we probably should have one as you travel northbound just past Triumphal. If it's not there, we can make sure one is added, as well as the pavement stencil 25.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from my fellow commissioners? Okay, I'd just like to make a comment that regarding the stop signs, I think the city is very clear about the intent is not to slow speeds, and that probably what could mitigate some concern from the residents is just better understanding the purpose, which I think that our staff did a great job of tonight. That's the purpose of the stop signs is not to slow down traffic coming north and south on Hart Glen, but to better prevent potential accidents and to improve safety and liability for the folks that are traveling from the Linden Grove. So So I think that I'm definitely comfortable moving forward with the proposal as it is. And I also really appreciate our city's willingness to take a step further to uncover what the true issues are from the residents that wrote these letters in, which appears to be speed on Heartland. And I am happy to hear that the city will be following up on those concerns. So at this time,
I'd like to move to accept staff's recommendation for all 4 points of staff's recommendation.
I second.
Commissioner Engler,
Yes.
We'll read.
Commissioner Lemo,
Yes.
Commissioner Reader,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gregory,
Yes.
Chair Simpson.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. The Traffic Commission makes recommendation to the City Council, and interested parties may attend the City Council meeting and speak either for or against the recommendation of the Traffic Commission. Any person wishing to appeal a decision of the Traffic Commission shall file a written appeal and pay an appeal fee with the City Clerk's Department within 14 calendar days of this decision. The matter will be referred to the City Council at the earliest reasonable and available date. The appeal fee will be refunded only if the City Council overturns the Traffic Commission's decision. An appeal form is available from the recording secretary.
All right, we will move on now to item 6B, Avenida de los Arboles and Moore Park Road to the 23 freeway status report by Mr. Mashiko.
Okay, thank you, Chair Simpson. I'll just give you a very brief status report on Avenida de los Arboles between Moore Park Road and the 23 freeway. We had a concern raised at a prior meeting about additional congestion within that segment. Maybe it takes a little bit longer to get through that segment where we restriped the road back in, this dates back to 2011. So let me just show you, here's the map that shows the entire segment between 23 freeway and Moore Park Road. This is what we had before, 4 lanes in each direction, center line stripe down the middle, and we did have a 3-way stop control at Arboles and Calle Bougainvillea. That was changed in late 2011 after a road resurfacing project, which resulted in what we have today, 1 travel lane in each direction, a center 2-way turn lane, a bike lane in each direction, and a defined parking lane. So we've done a number of traffic volume counts through the years, dating back to March 2010 before the striping was changed. Back then, the traffic volume was about 19,000 vehicles per day, and you could see after in 2012, 13, and most recently this year, there hasn't really been a significant change. It's this year was the highest volume reading that we had, but it's not significantly more than what we originally started with. We also conducted a number of travel time studies for that entire segment. I've highlighted in red what the change has been through the years. For the morning commute period, this table summarizes what we had in the morning commute for both the eastbound and westbound direction. And as of today, we're able to get through that entire segment much quicker than back in 2010. And here's the PM peak period travel time studies, and it's still about the same today. We're able to get through much quicker. I do know that at the intersection of Moore Park and Arboles, we do have what we call a fire station preemption system in place at that signal. So depending on if you get there at the wrong time when an ambulance or fire vehicle or police vehicle sets off the preemption, you may have to wait much longer because it's going to favor green time on Moore Park Road. So those could be the situations in which Arboles will back up during those times. And when we did our studies, I don't think it happened. I didn't see long delays, but this is something that we're going to continue to check on and monitor and periodically bring back to the Traffic Commission. So with that, if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Commissioner Reader?
Thank you. Just one quick question, Mr. Mashiko. What influence did the elimination of that stop sign have on travel times?
I think that was probably one of the biggest improvements in terms of removing travel time, because depending on how long the queue was as you approach that stop sign, that you could be waiting as low as, if there's no vehicles, 5 seconds, but if there's a handful of vehicles, you could be waiting there 15, 20, 30 seconds. So I think that's what these reduced travel time numbers reflect, is mainly that loss in that stop sign.
Thank you. And the stop sign was removed because it wasn't warranted. Is that correct? It didn't meet the warrant?
No, I think it was basically, the idea was it was installed for speed control. And when we put in this restriping, this is a way of calming the traffic down, which it did. We didn't see any changes really in vehicle speeds after the removal of that stop sign. But what it did do is allow people to get from one end of the road to the other much quicker and more efficiently.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gregory?
Yeah, I'm quite pleased with this, since I was on the commission at the time, and people swore this would never work, and it was never it was going to create a huge problem. But I mean, allowing them to have more line of sight because of a safe zone to pull out and a neutral area, and now everybody just travels at a nice sane speed down there, and everything just flows. And you had mentioned Moore Park Road, on the other side of that intersection from the fire department is Trader Joe's, one of my favorite destinations, and I took that route just today, and I have to say, I feel a lot more relaxed driving down it the way it's engineered today than the way it was before. People would make a left-hand turn, and all of a sudden, everybody's scrambling to go around them. And so, there were conflicts with people trying to make sudden lane changes and stuff. So I think staff did a great one, and I see us using that same technique many places, and I think it works very well. Gets people where they want to go, and it doesn't encourage them to drive any faster than they should, and it's a safer environment for everyone. So thank you.
It appears there's no further questions, no speaker comments regarding to that agenda item. So we will move on to item 7, to the status report of prior traffic commission recommendations.
Okay, this is just a quick information that I believe the last time the traffic commission met in July, there was an item to consider changing the distance at which a vehicle can be parked from a fire hydrant from 15 feet on one side to down to 10 feet. We're going to take that item to our city council next month.
Great. And if there's no questions, then we will move on to item 8, commission referrals. I just did that. Yep. So we're to item 9, work program and commission schedule. And there's no questions because we have no materials there. So we're moving on to item 10, traffic commission comments and discussion. Does anyone have a comment or something to share? Commissioner Reeder?
Thank you. If I could take the commission's time for a moment, I'd like to report that I was invited by Jim Mashiko and Robert Sweeting to observe an intersection that the flashing yellow arrow was, and what we did was change the flashing yellow arrow not to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Mashiko, not to become effective immediately when the green light for the straight ahead traffic would appear, but to hold the traffic for a moment to allow the opposing traffic to get a start, so that the person that sees a flashing yellow arrow thinks that maybe they have a red light still, and then proceeds to make the turn. So they did that, and it just seemed to work out beautiful. But the reason I really bring this up is during the course of our conversation, it came up to the cameras that are used to run our software. We don't record anything in the city. And I always thought, well, it would be nice to record something even if you kept it for a few days. There was just a robbery at one of the stores near the intersection there. What is it, the sporting goods store? And the description of the car was a white van or something. But if there was a short-term recording on that, maybe you would pick up a license plate of the car that was involved in such a thing. Maybe pedestrian conflicts that we could see without someone having to be there all the time, where we learn about it after the fact, but then we really don't know what happened, accidents, this and that. So I was told that we can't make a recording because there's a state law that says if you record, you have to keep that for a year. And if you recorded many intersections, that's so much data, it would be prohibitive. But I would like the commission's opinion as to what we could do about that, because I've been in conversation with, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. It's Mr. Womack, our assistant city attorney. And he gave me some information, and I'd like to read a little bit of what he said, and I quote, "The city is required to maintain video recordings a minimum of 1 year, providing the recordings fall within the exception provided by section 34090.6. But on note 1, it says, the code allows an agency to destroy routine video within 90 days, but requires the content of the video to be transcribed. I'm thinking you can't transcribe automotive movement. So maybe there's an exception in the law that would allow us to do 2-3 day short-term recordings that would just record over and over and over itself. I'd like the commission's opinion as to this is something we should look into for the city, or just leave it as it is. I'd appreciate your input.
Respectfully, for the commission, this is a time for commissioners' comments and for the commission to take an action on the agenda.
Understood, but I was asking permission for the commission to actually consider agendizing it.
I think that we would need to put it on the agenda so that we would have time to consider the opinions that we would have, correct? With the process?
Yes, Madam Chair, you are correct. If the commission would like us to bring back a discussion or report on this issue, we could do that at a future meeting with the concurrence of all of the commissioners, or majority of the commissioners. Thank you.
Would that be agreeable, commissioners, to table this and have it be officialized as an agenda item?
I agree with just one little proviso. If we're going before, I would like to have it agendized as to first, what is the net purpose or the net outcome hoped for? And if it's, I'd like to know why we're going that next deep level for a couple of reasons, not the least of which is staff time, but also being in many cities, dealing with the public's concern about recording of anything nowadays. I think we have to think about that. I would just like to know what the outcome is. Is it going to stop accidents? Is it going to make traffic flow better? Is the recording of something going to make an intersection safer? Because in theory, we do have a recording right now. The recording is the traffic reports of collisions or events that take place in an intersection. And so for that reason, I'd like to know what the end game is from staff first, and then we can have an educated debate at a later date.
Commissioner Gregory?
Yeah, and this starts to become a slippery slope as to, okay, let's say something did happen and those could be useful. Whose responsibility is to sit down and watch hours of traffic looking for God knows what? I mean, who's going to pay for those man hours to do that? And it's kind of like, well, if we capture everything, we can catch everyone, but that does take some manpower. I mean, who's going to budget for it? The raw data itself isn't any good unless somebody actually processes it. So, yeah, I think we really need to think about this from, a budget standpoint, a feasibility standpoint. I may be incorrect, but I know there are some huge federal restrictions pertaining to like freeways, because Caltrans, I know, captures on HD TV a lot of information to monitor traffic flows and all that, and could even look inside cars, but they're prohibited under invasion laws for that. And I would kind of wonder, what capturing some of this might expose us to also, if something inadvertently could set us up in a lawsuit situation. So I think we need to dive down into this a lot more. Some complications, but I'd like to hear some other opinions before I'm going to, have one myself.
I agree with Commissioner Gregory. I'd also tend to think that our Ventura County Sheriff's Department or our Thousand Oaks Police may have already gone through this exercise, and they would have made a recommendation if they thought it was going to enhance the safety or the results. Don't know that for sure, but I believe they've probably been through this exercise.
Commissioner Reeder?
I want to thank my fellow commissioners for their opinion, and well taken. And if you don't bring these things up, we never have a chance to make a decision. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reeder, and you're always so thoughtful about the ideas you bring to the commission, and I really appreciate it. And are there any other comments from our fellow commissioners here? Commissioner Gregory?
Not on that specific, but I do see permit parking petition on Camino Manzanas, who is infamous as being the only neighborhood that qualified for speed humps and actually rejected them. But do we do that kind of thing? I mean, I know Redwood School's right down. Is that just something that affects an area near the school?
Yeah, anytime there's a request for permit parking, we do bring them to our traffic commission, and ultimately they would have to be approved by city council. Most of the permit parking areas are near the high schools, TO High School, Newbury Park High School. We have one permit zone near the medical center, Los Robles.
Right.
Young Avenue, I believe, is the street, and there's a Canal Creek residential neighborhood that has overnight permit parking restrictions. So we did receive a request about, I guess, a number of vehicles parking in front of some of the homes in that area. So a petition was received, and we'll be bringing that to the commission for review.
Okay. It's kind of a rarity, so all right. Thank you.
Yes. Commissioner Engler?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mashiko, I have sent you a referral via email regarding street signs that are blocked by foliage, and I just wanted to make you aware of it, but it's something I felt I could refer to you by email.
Okay, I'll definitely take a look at that and make sure it gets reviewed by myself and our landscaping crews.
Any other thoughts? Okay, I have just one quick question. I noticed that the intersection at Triumpho and Westlake Boulevard is halfway covered with green cross marking, and I wondered if there was a plan to finish that project or if it was a pilot program of some sort. I see it, and I just wondered if there was a status update on that cross marking.
Is that portion on Westlake that's not done yet?
It's on, technically it's right through that new pathway, and so half of it's been painted and the other half isn't. So it's half on, well, it's really Triumpho. I guess.
So I believe that is going to be completed as part of the resurfacing for Westlake Boulevard. Caltrans is coming back through and going to be resurfacing and adding all the remaining striping.
Okay, great. Thanks. And with that being said, I think that concludes our meeting this evening. This is item 11, adjournment. The Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission is now adjourned until 6 p.m. on November 21st, 2018 in the boardroom of the Civic Arts Plaza on the 3rd floor. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.